Okay. Okay, so the recording has begun and we're on Dalam, the Path to Bliss, Course 3, Class 1. And so the important thing that I want to say, and you may get requested by somebody else who has requested tantric initiation to give them the transmission of this class, because the tantra class portion of sadhana, it's required for anybody who has requested a tantric initiation. You have to show up. You have to come to class. You can't really miss a class. And if you do miss a class, it's up to you. You have to get an oral transmission. You will not get the audio recording. And so, which is completely, it's totally okay with me. Any reason, whatever you want to do is okay with me. And missing a tantra class is the seed that you plant when you miss a tantra class is very serious. It's a very big deal. It's a very potent seed. Okay. It's like a super potent seed to show up at a tantra class. And it's a very, very potent seed to not show up at a tantra class. So I think it's really important to understand that part. And if somebody does ask you to give a transmission of this class, then that's a really important part to transmit. So, when we okay, and then today's class talks about bodhicitta. We're continuing with bodhicitta and the different methods to cultivate and create bodhicitta, So, and so far we did the first way, which is what? Who can remember? What's the first way that we cultivated bodhicitta? Do you remember? Who does?
Is it the 7 steps, which include thinking about recalling the kindness of your mothers?
Yes, exactly. Recalling the kindness of your mother. And actually, it starts out with every being is my mother, not just has been, but every being is my mother. And then you recall their kindness and then you repay them, right? So those are the 3 ways to use that method for cultivating bodhicitta, is to think every being is my mother. They've been so kind to me. How can I ever repay them? That's the first way to cultivate ultimate bodhicitta. So says the Path to Bliss, the text called Path to Bliss. And living the Path to Bliss is a lived, embodied practice. Yes, it's good to debate it. It's true that it is. It's really good to debate it, but it's an embodied practice. You want to live this idea of every living being is my mother, and God, the kindness that they've done. And how do you ever, repay that? To live that, the essence of that is the path to bliss. That is the path to bliss, embodying those concepts. So it's not so much anymore about homeworks and quizzes and finals and debating, okay? It's about live it, feel it in your cells, So I don't know. Do you guys know the story of the Wheel of Life and King Udrayana? Does anybody know that story? So I'll tell it too quickly. So um, he had like a buddy named King Bimbisara, and they got into this cool practice of sending one another offerings, making offerings to one another, as smart tantric kings do. So this happens in Japan too. It's hilarious. Like you give somebody something, or you do something nice for somebody, and they give you something in return. And then if they do that, then you have to then give them something in return. And it just keeps going like that. And this is this beautiful thing where people are just always giving one another things. And with kings, they have to kind of try to outdo the gift that they got. And so that kept on happening until finally one day, one sent the other a priceless jewel, and the other one just didn't know what to do. It was like so breathtakingly priceless that they didn't know what to do anymore. They didn't know what to send back. And so that king goes to his head honcho prime minister or whatever and says, what do I do? How do I repay, King Bimbisara or Ujjayana or whatever, whichever one it was? And the minister says, okay, look, I tell you what you could do. There's this guy, he's teaching over there on Vulture's Peak someplace, and they call him Gautama. Gautama is his name. You should go and paint him, or have him painted, and give the painting of this Gautama guy to the king. That will be more priceless than this jewel, right? So the king does, and he says, okay, go do it. Just do it. He doesn't go. He just says, okay, do it, as kings do. And he sends the court painter or whoever to go and paint Gautama Buddha. And whoever goes to paint Gautama Buddha and just like doesn't come back for a while. And finally the king sends for him and says, what's going on? Where's the painting? I got to give it to the other king. And so the court painter says, well, I don't have it. I don't have it. And the king says, what are you talking about? You don't have it. Get it, do it. And he says, well, yeah, I went and I tried, but I looked at this guy and I just like, and he says, what do you mean? He says, well, I couldn't do anything. I just sat there and I wanted to gaze into this guy's eyes, and I couldn't do anything but sit there and gaze into his eyes. And the king says, what are you, crazy? And the court painter says, no, I'm serious. He renders me completely like motionless and still, and I can't function. I just add. So the king goes to see for himself. And I just want to make sure I get the story right. You know how I always forget the punchline, right? Okay. So they projected an image of Gautama or something onto a sheet, and they just did an outline. So the court painter does this. So he just did an outline of his memory or something, the way he remembered Gautama. And he just did an outline. And Lord Buddha told him to also put in the wheel of life. And so the court painter does this, which was the wheel of life, right? With the Buddha up in the corner. And so the court painter takes this to the king, and the king looks at this painting and he immediately goes into the direct perception of emptiness. He immediately goes into the direct perception of emptiness. So that's the teaching of the wheel of life, right? But the teaching on the wheel of life is very, very intense and very difficult. So, that teaching is something that, I don't know, we should do it one day, or you should try to get it from Geshe Michael, or I'm sure it's on the knowledge base. I'm sure it's on his website. It would be a good one. Okay, so anyway, the moral of the story is that it's a really good idea to hang that wheel of life in any temple, you know, or to have it like at the entrance to your home or your meditation space or something like that. And you can remember that, the moral of that story. Okay, so then the next part of the transmission of class 1 is that one of the monks who was a disciple, a devotee of Lord Buddha, was always thinking of his ex-wife, right? Because he's a monk at this point. So his ex-wife, he can't stop thinking about her. And he's telling Lord Buddha this. So Lord Buddha says, okay, look, you know, I'm gonna, here, come, I'll take you on a trip to hell and to the other realms, and it will be really cool. So Lord Buddha takes him on a trip to hell, which is a code word of saying Lord Buddha takes him on a trip through his mind states, all his different mind states, all different possibilities of mind states, the hellish mind states. And when they got back from their trip to hell, to the hell realms, the monk was completely ready to buckle down and to like focus on the practice that was going to work for him. And Lord Buddha asked him to draw what he had seen. And that also went on the Wheel of Life painting. So it's a super intense piece of art, you know. And, you know, we are in a very fortunate time. We have this incredible world where the Dharma is flourishing in all kinds of different ways, all over the place, right? It's just flourishing, actually. And it's really unbelievable and difficult to imagine that it could be true. You know, how did we get so blessed? And if we really do our tantric practice, if we do it, then we can make a mandala of our entire world. You know, mandala means a divine world, right? Divine universe. We can turn our entire world into a divine universe. And the purpose of Diamond Mountain was to train teachers, and it's still Geshe Michael's purpose to train teachers. And so it doesn't matter how that looks, by the way, you know, to train teachers as I give you this particular Dharma, you know, the way that you pass it is very individual and very unique, but pass it you do, you know, pass it you will somehow, you know. So we finished the first method for developing bodhicitta. And Dakshin Yamje, exchanging self and others. So exchanging self and others is one of those practices that is so radical and so misinterpreted and so misunderstood, much like the rest of tantric practice, that it's very sketchy in the texts. And it's very difficult because it is so sketchy and because you have to get it as a live transmission from a teacher who explains to you exactly what it is to exchange yourself and others. And so Geshe Michael really elucidated on this idea of Dakshin Yamje. And the first part of Dakshin Yamje, exchanging self and others, is the first part is where we treat each other equally. We treat each other equally. So I think some of you have had some exposure to, for example, David Deda's teachings. or maybe Om Rupani, you know. So these are two teachers that I really love very, very much. David Data especially, but both David Data and Om Rupani borrow heavily from Dakshin Nyamje. And in their case, they're transmuting, you know, the idea of Dakshin Nyamje, in the case of David Data, into human relating, you know, man-woman relating, the relationships between men and women. And in Om Rupani's case, also men and women, but in a very specialized setting. But so let's talk about David Data for a moment. David Data talks about first stage relationships, second stage relationships, and third stage relationships, right? So in David Data's case, he talks about first stage relationships. So the way that that might look is where the one is always looking out for themselves, you know, and there's not much room to look out for the other. You know, are you giving me what I want? You're not giving me what I want. You know, I'm going to dump you and find somebody who's going to give me what I want. That's like a first stage relating style. I'm going to be very brief with this. Second stage relating style is like the first step of Dakshin Nyamje, where you think, okay, let's go 50-50 on this deal. You know, you scratch my back, you know, I'll scratch yours. You know, you pay half the grocery bill, you know, or, you know, I'll buy all the groceries, you pay the mortgage. You know what I mean? It's this, you know, equal relating idea, right? That's stage one of Dakshin Nyamje. And the most ultimate stage of Dakshin Nyamje is very similar to David Data's idea, what he calls third stage relating. So in third stage relating, you've taken your relating with your partner to a stage where not only are you equal, but you've transcended the idea of needing to equalize, and you've transcended the relationship to a state where the only important thing is the cultivation of the love. The cultivation of the love becomes like the third partner. And everything you do with that partner is in service of the cultivation of the love. That could look weird. It could look like you give your partner away. It could look like you share your partner. It could look like you leave your partner. You know what I mean? It can look real weird, okay? When you really serve the highest love. That's what David Data calls stage 3 relating. This is Dakshin Nyamje. And it's super radical because it can look really strange. The ultimate forms of bodhicitta, you know. So let's look at it in a few different ways, okay? Because this is a very important concept to understand before we could move on. So let's, you know, I've told you the story of the ice cream shop in Bowie quite often. Do you remember the ice cream shop in Bowie? And how we think about compassion and the 3 different stages of compassion. Who remembers the story of the ice cream shop or can give me an equal example to the ice cream shop example? You could use a donut. You can use a donut shop example or the woman in the ice cream shop or any example you want of the 3 stages of bodhicitta. Somebody here, please tell me, what are those 3 stages? Tell me real quick. Number 1, I walk into the donut shop and blah, blah, blah. Number 2, blah, blah, blah. Give it to me quick. Somebody.
Okay, I'll do it.
Sorry.
So the first step is that you go into the Baskin Robbins ice cream and you see this super obese girl. And the first step is that you feel sorry for them. You have empathy for them. And you think, oh my God, they're so obese. You just feel for them and their suffering. And then number 2, please step in, Lama, if I'm incorrect. Number 2 is that you, is it that you get, I know I'm confused with number 2 or 3, but number 2 is that you get them to come grocery shopping with you. You like make friends with them and you like,
You
hey,
take action.
you
You
take
take
action.
action. Number
Yeah.
one, just think, oh God, how I wish I could help them,
Yeah.
Number two is you do something.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you take them to, hey, why don't you come to Choices with me or Whole Foods and we'll go shop for some veggies. And then number three is that you understand that they're coming from you,
In
right?
what way would you understand that in the case of an obese person?
So, oh, I must have this endless hoarding addiction, or like I must have this, insatiable desire that is hurting somebody in my world, and for instance, like my karma is ripening into seeing this person who's obese and suffering
Yeah. Desire just rampant. Yeah.
coming from me. Yeah. Lotta, were you gonna say something? No. Okay.
So that's nice. Thank you. So those are the three stages of compassion, right? And the last one, the last one is the only one that's called great compassion, Mahakaruna. Mahakaruna means, oh my God, I get it. I get it. I get it. And I know this is coming from me and I know what I need to do. That's Mahakaruna. Okay, so can I please hear those three levels in a different context, whatever you want? Can someone give me another example? Just from your own life? Like, I want to hear you and really to embody this, it could be like the screaming husband, the donut shop or some other example. I have one too, but Lada, I can feel you reaching. Yeah, go, Lada.
I think I shared with you recently, my mind state is about me being an intellectual useless. I cannot handle my studies and then I see my daughter coming to me and saying, Mom, I was given this task and I think I'm useless. Like, I cannot really, I don't believe I can do this. Like, I don't know what to do. And like, so that's example of how my own seeds that I plant in my mind manifest in my world and in people around me. So how I see the effects of so I was trying to say that. Yeah.
Thank you, Lada. That's really beautiful. But what's really beautiful about that, let me just say, is that she's giving that story ass backwards, right? So she's having an experience of, oh, I'm so useless. And then she sees her daughter come to her saying, oh, I'm so useless. And she's like, oh my God, I get it, right? But what's more, that's difficult. That's really difficult. But the other way around is much more difficult, where your daughter comes to you and says, I'm so useless, I'm so useless. And she's suicidal maybe, or deeply depressed. She's really feeling despair from being completely useless. And as the mother, right, you'll have this incredible outpouring of empathy, right? You just feel like, oh my God, right? And then as the mother, then you send her to Carrie Ann. You know what I mean? You're like, Carrie Ann, do something, you know what I mean? That's like the stage 2 compassion, right? And stage 3, by the way, you never lose 1 and 2, right? You keep 1 and 2, and stage 3 is what Lada just told us. Oh my God, I get it, I get where this, like, she's coming to me, she's feeling useless. I have this habit too, I have this habit too. Yeah, that's one cause for sure. This habituation that we might have, I'm too old, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, blah, 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 blah. All that habituation, of course, you're going to hear it coming back at you. There's no doubt about it. And you can always look for more causes, right? for when someone comes to you in that kind of a state, other causes. What kind of other causes could there be? Like when I think someone comes at me and they're really, really, really depressed and feeling useless. Yeah, I would definitely think, oh my God, I did that harm to myself, I treated myself that way. Right. So let's just tweak it a little bit. Like, let's say somebody comes to me and says, you are so useless. You are so useless. Right. Then it might be a little bit more that I made somebody else useless. You see? And, if I think that, oh, everyone thinks I'm too old, right? Maybe it's because it turns out that I'm really attractive to men. Hello. It turns out that I'm super attractive to them. And 95% of them, I just think, they're too old. Uh-oh. I didn't even think twice about it. I don't even want to talk to them, meet them, nothing. They're just like, nah, they're too old. You know what I mean? So when we begin to get a real connection, that's a very high form of compassion. Because from that place, we can make an informed and conscious decision, you see, about how to tweak our reality, how to be a Neo, you know who Neo is? Does everyone know who Neo is? Can reach in and change reality. Yeah.
Can you help work through my
Yeah.
real life
Yeah.
compassions?
Let's all have a little example here. I think that would be a really good idea. This is Mhm.
So when I was younger, I was disgusted with obesity. And then I guess 3 years ago or whatever, my dad at the dinner table told me I was fat and then took me out to the garage and asked me how much I weighed and blah, blah, blah. And I was really offended. And I didn't talk to him for the longest time. I think you know part of that story. And but I am working at not being disgusted with my body. But it seems like somehow I just, no matter what I do, like I fasted for 4 years, I still fast. I don't eat crap. As I sit here and have my sacred cacao, that's not crap. So then when I take my action, right? And, but now, and I understand that I'm experiencing my karma for all the disgust that I had in the past. But I don't want to find the compassion with me because it's my own sense of punishment.
Okay.
So, and I can't, I almost said can't, but because it's a deal breaker for me. And even when I do yoga, I'm like, I used to be able to kiss my knees, into Tadasana and forward bend, forward fold. And I'm just like, it's just your belly that's in the way. That's why you can't kiss your knees. So same with shoulder stand. Like I used to have a beautiful shoulder stand, and it's my weight that gets in the way, and my thumbs can't hold up my hips. And so
Hold that thought. Carrie Ann, have you got one? Like a Mahakaruna, kind of a little example?
I'm all over. I don't have a specific one. I'm just like connecting dots with a whole bunch of training I did and everything with compassion. So I don't have anything like specific. If it comes, I'll unmute again.
Okay.
Just all over.
Yeah. Okay. Because what's happened so far here is really, so you could mute yourself for a second, Deborah. What's really significant about what we've been saying is actually the reason that we have a part 2 of Dakshin Nyamje. Okay. which we're going to get to in a second. So I don't know if you notice, but in each case, right, except for Eva, because she was quoting from scripture essentially, or not from scripture, but somebody else's story, Geshe Michael's. So except for Geshe Michael's example, we all brought up me. Me. All of us. So it's not the fat lady in the 31 flavors, you know. It's not, oh, my depressed daughter that was the catalyst. It was me. I'm so old. I'm so fat. I'm so useless. And that is the topic of the second part of Dakshin Yamje, because Master Shantideva realized that there was going to come a time when this equalizing yourself with others thing, you know, like it just wasn't going to cut. It wasn't going to cut it. But before we get there, I want to just talk a little bit more about this state, what David Data calls stage 2 relating. Okay. How do I equalize myself with others? And Master Shantideva gives us so many different things, you know, so many different examples. You know, in the case of the ice cream girl, it's how do I widen my circle of me? And, you know, he talks about how to widen my circle of me, right? And the example, the most beautiful example is, you know, he says, debate style, you know, in his text, he says, look, what do you do if you get a cut? What do you do if you get a cut on your thumb? You know, you go wash your thumb, you know, you take care of it, you put a Band-Aid on, right? And he says, yeah, exactly. And then he says, well, what do you do if you tear your meniscus? Oh my God, you know, like then I have to rush to the hospital and move in with Amy and Paul. And, you know, he says, yeah, so you take care of your knee? Yeah. And then he says, well, what about if you have a headache, you know? Oh, you know, peppermint oil in my temples and, you know, oh yeah, maybe endless list of things that I do, you know, for my headache, you know. And he goes on and on like this with the different body parts. And he says, well, how many body parts do you even have? I don't know, you know, like, what are you talking about? You know, muscles, there's like thousands, you know, 700 bones or something. And right? Like, how many body parts do you even have? And however many it is, what are you going to take care of them all? You're going to take care of all of your body parts? Yeah, of course. I'm going to take care of them all. I'm going to take care of all of them because they're all me. And so he says, okay, so what about if you just widen that circle from, you know, 10,000 body parts to include one more person? So for those of us who are mothers, which is the majority of us here, and Eva can understand this. So, you know, it's easy, right? Your children are always in your circle. I mean, they're in your circle. They're in your womb. They're literally in your womb circle, you know, and even when they're born, they're always in your circle. And so, you know, how if your son, like, I don't know, Jordan broke up with a girlfriend one time and I felt it like it had happened to me, you know, like I really experienced the pain of it. And that's how it is with children, you know, you feel their pain as though it were you, right? So they're like a body part. They are like a body part. They're like a body part. They were a body part and they're always a body part, you know? So that's a kind of like a no-brainer, you know? But what about if we could then increase the circle, widen the circle, and then maybe the ice cream, you know, now going to the ice cream parlor reflects the desires of everyone, you know? So I go to the ice cream parlor with my mother, you know, and usually we share some stuff, because one helping of anything is way too much for either of us. And, she likes one kind and I like the other, and then it's a negotiation, right? Should we have one scoop of each or blah, 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 right? So having one scoop of each is like the stage 2 relating, 50-50, I'll give you a little one, right? And so to a point, I've included her in my circle and considered her desire in selecting my ice cream. But, there comes a point where you can be serving all your 10,000 body parts, constantly serving all your 10,000 body parts, and you can't be happy. It's never good. You're never good enough for you. Endemic, not just in this Zoom room, okay? It's endemic. I'm just not good enough for me, How can I ever consider anyone else? I am so busy trying to serve all these 10,000 parts of me that are never good enough. How could I possibly widen my circle? To include one more, It's overwhelming, right? So Master Shantideva says, yeah, it is overwhelming. And frankly, you'll never be able to do it. I changed my mind. It's kind of useless to even suggest it as a first step. It's useless, driven by desire as we are, So he says, okay, I tell you what, I give you another method, okay? And it's called, switching yourself with the other, which is the true meaning of Dakshin Nyamje, exchanging self with the other, right? So then he says, look, here's what you do. You have to listen carefully. This is really, really, really difficult. And I'm not sure that I have ever understood it correctly. And every time I hear it, I hear something new in this teaching of Dakshin Nyamje. So try to listen with every fiber of your body as though I was speaking in this 3-year retreat voice, okay? Like barely breathing kind of a voice. So, okay. It's where you put yourself, it's where Master Shantideva says, look, just be selfish. Don't even worry about it. My body, my ice cream, my intelligence, my self-worth and value, my youthful, resilient, vibrant, glorious, gorgeous self and body, me. Just think of yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. Just be completely selfish. And once you have succeeded in allowing yourself to be completely selfish about what you want, you put yourself into the body of the other. You put yourself into the body of the other with this totally selfish mind. Me. Here's how it works. It's very difficult. Listen carefully. Let's say we're talking about yoga. And Master Shantideva says, let's practice, let's do the dark side of the practice. The dark side of the practice is actually the funnest, okay? So he says, let's do the practice of pride, competitiveness, jealousy, okay? And we'll put it in the context of a yoga class. So you're in, and he says, Master Shantideva says, do not hesitate, okay? So imagine yourself in a yoga class or go to a yoga class and just be completely like full of pride, and competition and jealousy, okay? Okay? Like be really, really, really like surreptitiously actually watching everyone else in the class, through your headstand. Somehow, like here you are in your headstand and you've got this peripheral vision and you can see everyone else's headstand or whatever, and everyone else's, Uttita Parshvakonasana. And you can feel, like, wow, look at that. weird. That person can't even straighten their leg. What's wrong with them? Like how long have they been doing yoga and they're so useless and their form is just shit and who's their teacher, And, you know, oh my God, how long have they been on that perfectly balanced headstand, Fall out already, you asshole, You know what I mean? You just let yourself go, okay, in a yoga class. Just let yourself feel, I'm so jealous. I am like seriously jealous. And I actually used to do, I really had this, okay? It's not a very powerful fuel for me anymore, I have to say, but still I can easily do it. I can easily go to, for example, a yoga class or an ecstatic dance, I do more of that these days, and get like super jealous. Especially since I tore my meniscus, I can do it better again, like get really jealous about people who can get like really deep on the floor and, move around really freely and, they're not encumbered by injuries and, the creaky older body, blah, 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 blah. And so let yourself fully go into that jealousy and that competitiveness and that pride. And then what you do is you put that mind state into the body of the teacher, for example, in the yoga class. And you allow your mind state to move into the body of the teacher. And their mind state is now directed at you. Let me say it again. Your jealous, competitive, prideful mind is now in the body of your yoga teacher who's looking at you and having those thoughts. She's really bad. She's like super useless, Whose class has she been going to? Her triangle just sucks, Directed at you. And if you do this practice skillfully and well and dark, be really dark. You have to really allow your darkness, right, to come. And if you do this and you experience, your yoga teacher or your mother or your somebody to be having your mind state relative to you, you can feel some real empathy, some real compassion. Because you know how awful it is to think of your yoga teacher thinking of you that way. It's a practice, right? They're not really thinking of you that way. You're doing Daksha Nyamje, but if you do it well, and you can really feel your mind in their body directing this thought process at you, the compassion that arises is very, very, very intense. And what effect do you think that will have? It will raise Maha Karuna very quickly, right? Because it is, after all, your mind. You've just done the practice of exchanging self and others. Are you following this? This is really difficult, right?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just to clarify, because I also, so many different vantage points as you could have in there. And then I'm doing all these lovely trainings to
I know.
actually do this in session with people, because there's enough people now doing it in psychology.
Yeah.
So would the teacher then, is the idea from what we're talking about today that the teacher would have this compassionate view on us because there we are suffering in all of this jealousy and competitiveness? Is that? No. Okay.
So
just checking. One of many possible.
So when you do Daksha Nyamje, you usually you're working with darkness, okay?
Right. Okay.
You're working with darkness, so your own darkness. So I'm so useless. I'm so fat. Okay, let's use I'm so fat. Let's use I'm so fat. How about that? So let's say that, I go to see Carrie Ann, and I'm really fat. Let's say I really am very, very, very fat. Or let's say I think I'm fat. I'm not really that fat, but I think I am. And I'm telling Carrie Ann, oh, I have this thing, I'm like anorexic or whatever. I have like issues, body image issues. I think I'm so fat. And I just like let it go with all this I'm so fat thing. And then if I'm going to do Dakshin Yamje, what I'm going to do is to put my mind state inside the mind of Carrie Ann and imagine her thinking about me. You are so fat. What's the matter with you? Like, don't you have any self-esteem? Okay. So, that's an example which isn't really relative in terms of how you would use it, but that's how the practice works. So what you want to do is you want to use that darkness, right? In the case of, so, it's not gonna be relevant in a therapist client kind of a scenario so much. But let's say, for example, let's say I think that Lada is really useless. Let's say I actually really think she is unintellectual, as she says. She's unintellectual, she's dumb, she's completely useless. Okay. So what I would do is I would think that to my heart's content. I would just look at her and I would think, fuck, you really are so useless, and I just let my mind go wild with it, except that I would put my mind into her body. I would put my mind into her body and then let my mind go. And when I put my mind into her body and I let my mind go, that thought process is now directing itself at me. So now I am in my mind. The practice is the observation of Lada thinking about me, those thoughts. You are so dumb. You are like, what is the matter with you? Don't you even have any, right? So now I'm experiencing Lada thinking that way about me. This is the practice of Dakshin Yamje. Lada is not thinking that about me. It's me having exchanged myself with her. So now I have an experience of what it is when somebody thinks about me that way. I have an experience of what it is. So say, for example, Lada thinks that way about her daughter. That would be a really good practice for Lada to do with her daughter, because I bet that there might have been one or two instants, microseconds, where Lada looked at her daughter and thought, God damn, why are you so useless? Probably that's what gave rise to Lada having to think that she herself was useless, something like that, right? So then Lada could do Dakshin Yamje with her daughter by putting this mind stream of you're really useless, you really are very, very dumb, and putting herself into Nicole's body and experiencing Nicole having that thought stream towards Lada. That, Master Shantideva says, will arouse very high compassion in Lada for her daughter. Because now Lada understands what it's like for somebody to think about her, Lada, that way. It's a horrible thing when you can read someone's mind, okay? Let's say that now you're psychic and you can read someone's mind and everyone is jealous of you or thinks you're useless, or they think you're too old and, ugly and wrinkly, or they think you're too fat, it's really, really awful to be psychic. I'm sure it must be just horrible to be psychic, but it does arouse a lot of empathy. It arouses a lot of empathy and a lot of compassion in the case of Dakshin Yamji practice, okay? And you don't get to be psychic unless you've come by your psychic abilities, siddhis, right? Siddhis only come when they're like compassionately applied, right? Right? You know that, right? So you would have the siddhi of being psychic if you had done a lot of Dakshin Namje practice, for example. And that allowed you. So you did this practice over and over and over and over. And then you developed this siddhi of being able to read people's minds, not just towards you, but towards others and everyone, right? Then you can really have some compassion, you see. You see how they're thinking about themselves. You can hear how they're thinking about not just themselves, but others and you. Can you follow this? Does anybody else have any? Yeah, Lada?
Yes, I had a question to clarify. Actually, the first intention that I had in my mind when I put my mind in Nicole's and then looking back at me, I thought I will develop compassion toward myself, like empathy, because my mind is so bullying me and all this negative mind states. Of course, I'm projecting it, but I hurt myself because I'm I am undermining that being who I want to become. So is it my compassion towards myself? That's what exchanging is supposed to invoke, or compassion towards Nicole, let's say in my case, that I know that by her thinking that she's causing herself future pain.
It's always my own karma. It's always my own bodhicitta. You can never do anything for anyone. Right?
Yeah, so what I was trying to clarify is this practice supposed to invoke compassion in me towards me and towards everybody else, both? Or
it depends. It depends what you're doing and for whom. So what I suggest that you do, actually all of you, what I suggest that you do is that with the intention of cultivating compassion, you do the practice of projecting yourself into someone else with your darkest, dirtiest, nastiest, most shameful thoughts. Do it that way first. Then you'll have a very, very, very visceral and powerful understanding of how the practice works, okay? And it, by the way, works really the best in that situation, the dark side. So you allow your darkness to come. You allow your selfishness to arise. You allow your desire to control or whatever it is to come. You invite it in, but then you pop yourself into the body of someone else. And you imagine that they are having that whole thought process, your thought process, towards you. So it works well with jealousy, pride, contempt. Contempt is really powerful. So let's say I have contempt about my partner, for example. So what I would do is I would allow my contempt to come unabated. And I would just exchange myself with my partner and put myself into the body of my partner and allow my contempt to be in their body coming at me. So now I'm experiencing my partner having this depth of contempt for me. My contempt. Yes.
I just want to make clear. Thank you, Holy Lama, for making it so clear. I just want to make it clear in my mind. It's always the mind state that it's the mind state, like the klesha or whatever. It's always going to be the mind state, because I always used to think of it as just it's the mind state that I want to focus on back at me. not necessarily like, what is this person thinking about? Like, yeah, I don't know.
You're projecting yourself into someone else's body
Yeah,
with all your kleshas running rampant and wild.
yeah,
And you are no longer, you're receiving this other person's kleshas directed at you. That's the practice.
yeah,
It's really difficult, right? You see how hard it is to get a grasp on it, and how many times have you heard it? Right? So it was in this Dalam, right? It was in Path to Bliss class, course 3, class 1, that Geshe Michael really went crazy with this practice of Dakshin Nyamje. And he just worked it and worked it and worked it. And said to us, just spend all day long looking for your own darkness. Just let it come, you know, be super relaxed, right? Just relax, just relax. You know, I did a thing that I've never done before, not ever, actually, not ever. I listened to Roger and I teaching Lada this class. I've never listened to my own class before, to tell you the truth, other than to hear that it recorded or what's the sound quality or blah, blah. So I actually listened to it. It was really amazing to hear, like Roger teaching and stuff. It was pretty cool, Lada. Thank you. But what I got from that, and also from listening to Geshe Michael, is that it's allowing, understanding, and allowing every part of you to have a potent and powerful, rightful place in your practice. You know, so there's multifaceted benefits to Dakshin Nyamje, right? Because first of all, you have to gather your fuel, and your fuel is your darkness. And the darker it is, and the more, you know, you don't want to talk, you know, the darker it is, the better it is, right? And then you take all of that darkness, you know, all of your pride and, you know, I'm so good, I'm so much better, you know, I want to control, I want to like, blah, blah. And you take all of it and you pop into someone else's body and you let yourself feel it coming at you. It's like so humbling, you know, it's so humbling, and it gives you compassion. Because if you're really good at it, you really imagine them being this way towards you. It's like you're reading their mind, and that's what they're thinking of you. You know, you're so contemptible, you're so fat, you know. It's like super powerful. Yeah, Deborah.
Okay, I think I'm getting it, because it's an exercise, right? So I've got to take the reality out of it and insert the exercise.
It's a
So the
practice.
exercise is standing in my bodhisattva vows, standing in the bodhisattva of me, standing in the tantrika of me, or the dakini, or whatever the word is that we choose to use, and seeing the effect of the mental afflictions of being held by the other person, and to do the work so that they may relieve themselves of those mental afflictions. So to embody that aspect of the exercise.
Well, what it is if you do the practice, and you do the practice well, so that you really feel the effects of being able to read somebody's mind, like the yoga teacher, you know, or, you know, your therapist thinking you really are fat, you know, no wonder, you know,
But
you're really
yeah,
fat.
yeah.
Like if you really do the practice successfully,
Mhm.
and you imagine that going on, but it's a practice.
Mhm.
So therefore, what's happening is you're having all these visceral body sensations of being able to read somebody's mind who's thinking, you're so useless. Like, how horrible is that? But because you're a tantrika, because you're a bodhisattva, because you're doing Dakshin Nyamje practice, you understand that allowing yourself to do Dakshin Nyamje and therefore experience the feeling of your own thoughts.
So it's a
coming through.
transmutation in the process. Like you're taking,
So
you're
then what
turning
would
the
happen?
lead to gold.
So the intended effect is that, wow, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. Maybe but it's very transmutational. You're right. It's super transmutational. And the thing is that the allowing, this is Master Shantideva saying, allow yourself to be these things, allow it. Just do it. You can't stop it. I don't care how high and holy you think you are. You're not. You're not. Sorry. I don't care how, I don't care how like unsexed you think you are. I don't care how noble you think you are. I don't care how much of a high bodhisattva I think you are. You're not. That's what he's saying. He's saying, just dig deep for your darkness. Like that's your job. Dig deep for your darkness and put it all, pop into somebody else's body and see what it's like to have that darkness coming at you. The effect, oh my God, this feels horrible. For somebody to be so jealous of me, for somebody to feel that they can control me, for somebody to feel so prideful of me. This is horrible. This is my yoga teacher. This is right. So then the effect of all of that is compassion. It's compassion. That this is a practice of cultivating compassion. And it's a practice that you actually have to do in that way in order to feel the effects of it. And if you don't push yourself to do this practice properly, which is to say, excavate for your deepest darkness, if you don't do the practice correctly, you'll never get the effects of the practice. But if you do excavate for your deepest darkness and you do the practice correctly, you'll see what happens. You'll have an experience. You will have an experience of extraordinary compassion. Extraordinary compassion. I remember when my partner left, I remember being grateful to him at one point because I finally had an understanding of what that was like to be to be rejected and abandoned. And because I had an understanding of what it was like to be rejected and abandoned, when I met people who also had been rejected or abandoned by a partner, I no longer had this reaction of get over it, like, what's your problem? There's lots of fish in the sea. What's the big deal? Just like get over it. I didn't feel that way anymore. I felt amazing compassion, like very, very, very deep compassion. Like, wow, I know how you feel. And I want to promise you that you will get over it. You will. So it switched, it transmuted from get over it, get over it, you wimp. It transmuted from that to you will get over it. Don't worry, you'll get over it. That's a big transmutation in my mind, in my heart. It's all happening in my own heart, nowhere else. Okay, so who had a question?
I just had like a thought because recently at work, there's this one guy and no one really likes him because he's so keen and he's like to the T with everything and everyone else is just like, fuck it, just do the job and whatever. I sunk my teeth into not liking this guy because he was a keener, way too intense at this really more or less relaxed job. And I was, talking to one of my coworkers who I think is cool. And I was like, yeah, this guy needs to get fucked. Like, he's way too uptight. He should just get fucked and whatever. And I came home later that day and I was like, you know what? Like, I feel bad about talking shit about this guy. And I was like, I should talk to Houston about it. So I told Houston, I'm like, yeah, what do you think? Like, was that mean? Like, I was empathizing with all the rest of my crew who didn't like this guy by talking shit about this guy. And Houston's like, that's really unkind, actually. That's super unkindy, but he's probably like, you know, you should have compassion for this guy because he's probably depressed and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's really unkind of you. And I was thinking, okay, like, I'm going to do Dakshin Nyamje with, I'm going to call his name, we'll call him McCork. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Like Dakshin Nyamje with McCork. And I'm thinking, I think of him keener, you know, loser. And I can go there and think of all the shit that I was thinking of him. But as soon as I go into him and think about that towards me, I'm like, oh, that's not true. Like, I'm not like that. I'm cool, you know, like I'm a chill, everyone likes me at work. I'm the chill girl. And you know what you said about you have to go there and fully feel into the darkness. Like, it's so true that the biggest obstacle is thinking that's not me. Like, that's not who I am. And so like,
Exactly.
and you know, that's the thing that I realized is like Deborah always says it, what do you always say, Deborah? If you
spot it, you got it. Good or
yeah, if
bad.
you spot it, you got it. And so like,
Yeah.
you know, and so like what I was thinking is like, okay, you know, as soon as I put my mind into McCork's and McCork was looking at me thinking, what a loser, I was like, no, like, that doesn't work. Like, I'm cool. Like, of course it doesn't apply to me, but actually, like, what I really have to do is integrate that part of me who's a loser and a keener that no one likes. And
that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's
and so
that's why it's the true cause of compassion, right? That's why it's the highest Mahakaruna.
Is that it's because of the emptiness of it all.
Yeah, it's because you get to experience it coming at you.
Yeah.
Your own mind state. You get to experience your own mind state coming back at you.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And so like there's this like part of it where it's like the boundaries all dissolve and it's just me with me and the energy, the flavor of the prana coming back. And it's just like, right, like there is no other kind of deal.
Exactly. And so that's one use of Dakshin Nyamje, right? Other uses are where like you put your mind, like I put my mind into my mother, for example. I'll put my mind into my mother and like serve food on that basis. My selfishness. I put my selfishness about my food choice, right? What we're going to have. You know what I mean? And I put that, you know, into my mother, you know, then if I allow my selfishness to go rampant in my mother as regards what we're going to eat tonight, what do you think I would select to eat? What she wants, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another use of Dakshin Nyamje. But that's more like the equal, you know, and that's kind of like, that comes back to the equalizing, right? The first stage of Dakshin Nyamje. And Geshe Michael says that. He says that use of Dakshin Nyamje just brings you back to the equalization, you know. Okay, so let's have some of this and some of that, you know. Or, okay, tonight we'll have everything the way you want it, Ma. Or, you know what I mean? That's one use, right? And it's very important to use it that way. But he says the use of the darkness is actually the most crucial one, because without that, you can never really do the other. You can never really do an override on your own desires and preferences, okay? And that is the reason why prostitution is one of the most noble occupations on the face of this earth. Okay, because that profession, that occupation requires that you completely dissolve your preference and you give pleasure to somebody with the intent that they feel deserving of that pleasure, that they feel completely filled with the pleasure to the exclusion of anything else, that there's no more, I'm not, my wife doesn't want to have sex with me, you know, I must be too big, too small, too smelly, too tall, too short, too fat, too thin, you know, I'm whatever, I'm not desirable, I'm not attractive, blah, blah, blah. The occupation of the prostitute is to make her client think he is the king, the most desirable man in the world, convince, in fact. There's like, I can hardly think of a higher state of grace in terms of bodhisattva activity than that particular example, because that's a stretch, right? That's a stretch, isn't it? You know, there's like the taboo that's inherent in that example, is it's rife with taboo. But I use the example because the man or the woman who can do that for their client has jumped over so many hoops all at once, you know, the hoop of the self-image, the hoop of the taboo, you know, of the this and that and the other thing, you know what I mean? The hoop of the taboo of even being there in that situation, you know, the hoop of the taboo of like somebody's paying somebody or blah, 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 whatever. There's so many taboos. But if you can provide such a service to the point where you have delivered the goods to your client. And what is the goods? What I just described. Wow. You know, that's a real Dakshin Nyamje, right? Right? You just put yourself in the body of the other. You think, what do they want? You know, that's one way of using it. That's one way to do Dakshin Nyamje. You could also, if you had really amazing concentration, you could also sit there and have all the thoughts you're having about the client. God, you really smell, you know, when was the last time you washed your feet? You know, like, you know, I've been doing massage, right? It's not like sex work. It's not sex work at all, but it's full body massage. It's very intimate. And when you do that, you know, a lot of mental afflictions come, you know, and I've been doing that kind of Dakshin Nyamje practice. So I take those thoughts and I put them in the mind of this person and I let them come back to me, right? But I'm in a service position, you know, and I think, oh my God, you know, like the compassion that comes allows me to fully do the service that I'm offering to this person. You know, in my case, I'm not charging because I'm practicing still, but this is it's a really, really nice way to practice a high state of grace, you know? Yeah. Because you know what I mean? The whole situation is so like pregnant with the possibility of taboo and mental affliction, and you know what I mean? There are a few situations that give rise to more of that kind of like, oh my God, it's like so fertile with rich with mental afflictions and taboos and judgments and wow, you know, it just goes on and on and on. Okay. So then First Panchen Lama says, think about what it's like when someone takes care of you. Okay. Someone takes care of you. So I think about when certain lovers were massaging me, for example. And, you know, for example, I had one lover who once said to me, oh, could you stroke my body? And I did. And he sat up and he looked me in the eye and he said, look, he says, he didn't wag his finger at me, but he looked me in the eye and he said, I want you to touch me for your pleasure. This was revolutionary, okay? It was revolutionary for my sex life anyway. It was revolutionary. So since then, that's what I've been doing. So when I'm being taken care of in that way, let's say, okay, so somebody is giving me an erotic massage or a sensual massage or any kind of a massage, right? When I feel like really taken care of, then I know, and what it feels like is that they are just in bliss from doing this to me, whatever it is. They're just like lost in pleasure. They're lost in pleasure. This is what it feels like. So if I can then think how good it would be if I could take care of them in whatever way, you know, that's another way, right? To do exchanging self and others. And that example also lends itself well to the practice of Dakshin Nyamje, by the way. Okay. Very, very well. So yeah, that's another big deal. Okay. So your partner likes a certain practice, you hate it. Okay. So whatever that practice is, you know, you pop yourself into their body and you imagine, you know, what it would be like if you could be doing like completely selfishly doing this thing to you, right? To you, right? That's Dakshin Nyamje too. Okay. I'm selfishly enjoying this practice that I want to do so badly. Right? It's complicated, right? Because there's many different ways you can do Dakshin Nyamje. So with the, right? So you have to take it thing by thing, like occasion, occurrence by occurrence. That's the reason that it's such a highly kept secret with this practice, because it's so radical and it's such a stretch and it's deeply misunderstood and people misuse it and do weird stuff with it, you know. They start like letting their darkness go crazy and they think, oh, you know, this is what it means, you know. I just get to be like completely selfish and just like whatever, lord it over everyone or something. Like they get it wrong, right? Tantric practice is always like that. It's really easy to get it wrong. That's the thing. It's super easy to get it wrong. But all of it is designed to allow the net, which, you know, the net that I put around, the string that I put around me, the boundary that I put around me, it allows us to stretch that boundary. That's what all tantric practice allows us to do, because it allows us ultimately to know, to feel, to see that there is no distinction, there is no boundary between you and me, right? It's a projected boundary. And the fact that I even see a difference is a karma, you know? And how do I dissolve? How do I switch up that karma to see you as different from me? Dakshin Nyamje. It's very, very difficult.
So can I practice the Dakshin Nyamje by, so I'm coming back to my fat story. And so I say, so if I would imagine my mom, if I gave her my thoughts and my mom was thinking those thoughts back to me, I have more compassion if she was thinking about them, about herself, than thinking them
Yeah.
about me.
You
So
got it right.
Yeah.
So, with this particular kind of Daksha Nyamje that we've talked about primarily today,
Mhm.
it's where it works really well with pride, control, competitiveness, jealousy, contempt about another person. Okay. Where and all of us came up with examples about me thinking badly about me. There are other practices that are better for that. Daksha Nyamje is where I have judgment about others, where I think I'm better than others. That's where it works really well. I'm jealous of somebody. I think I'm better. I have contempt. I'm superior to them. They're not fucking listening to me and I know better. That kind of mental affliction state is really, really, really good for this kind of Daksha Nyamje that we talked about today. You take that whole mind state and you pop yourself into the body of another person. You direct it at yourself and you let it come. You just let it come, you let it come, you let it come. Okay. Really, really effective for that. So what I think is useful is just to take it occurrence by occurrence, and this particular practice, use it in this particular way. So go on excavation for those mind states rather than the, I'm so fat, I'm so old, I'm so, you can do, so because okay, here's the thing, right? Is that I'm so fat comes from thinking, wow, you're really, really fat and ugly. I'm so useless comes from, you are really dumb. Okay. So we're pointing, Master Shantideva is pointing us back to the cause. Okay. Of the I'm so fat, I'm so dumb, I'm so useless. Okay. The cause of it is, oh, you are so like, wow, you're so useless, So he's pointing us back to the cause and giving us a practice to do. Okay. So like Lada heard her daughter coming and saying, I'm not capable. I'm not capable. And she felt empathy because she thought, oh my God, I was just having that, right? But if she hadn't been having it, right? She hadn't been having it. See, that particular example has different practices, but if you are having judgments about others because you are better, that's where to use it. So can we just say that for this upcoming week, we will practice in that given example. Whenever you think you're better than someone else, whenever you have a judgment about somebody else who's way fatter than you or something, okay? Or way more like dumb than you, or, and usually, right? Like, especially with thinking you're superior to others, it's just about everyone, that you're superior to just about everyone. Is the way it usually works with that particular example. But I'd like us to just practice with pride, jealousy, contempt, competitiveness, okay? For this week, okay? So that's the assignment. All right. Well,
Can I just ask a question? Is there
yeah.
in any of the classes or anything that you come across, is there sort of a more I don't know, comprehensive list of the different ways to use the practice? I get that that's got a certain amount of juice, but I'm just thinking about clients, and then I think sometimes that kind of thing might be okay, and sometimes the others for different purposes. And I'm just wondering if there's anywhere that it's kind of explicit about the different combinations, as opposed to me just trying to unpack it all.
Yeah. I mean, mental affliction by mental affliction is how it's generally given. You know what I mean? And, there's like many possibilities in terms of mental affliction, but also then you can just say desire, aversion, and ignorance, right? Or you can go with the top 5, or anything up to the 70,000, 72,000 nadis, right? Each of which represent a separate mental affliction. You know what I mean? So, but generally the practices are given by, okay, this particular way to practice, it's very, very good to use it with this particular mental affliction mind state. So, for example, they'll say desire, like if you have high desire and you're really into physical, your body and sex and stuff, like that's me. If that's you and you have high desire and you're going to use desire as your path, right? Then of course you're going to use desire as your path, and you probably are going to select partner yoga as your practice. But guess what? The way that it actually happens in real life, I can tell you right now, is that, oh my God, then you'll suddenly have this desire, and it's a mutual desire for somebody who for some reason is unavailable, like either they're like ridiculously way too young, or they're ridiculously way too old, or they're married, or they have a partner or something like that. It'll be like that. And so now there's all this desire, and you can't even practice with the object of the desire, even though it's consensual. So then what do you do? How do you use it? What do you do with it, and how do you use it? So then, then it becomes like well, I can give you real life examples, but I'll let your imagination go on that one. Like, how could I do that? So one way I did that with somebody that I met recently, who then wanted to have a massage, and I'm offering them to anyone, for gratis, pro bono, just for practice. And I consented to offer this massage to this person, but I insisted that he bring his partner, because in the end, although I wanted more than anything just to give him a massage, there's a thing with Tantra massage therapy that you don't do this therapy with a person to whom you're attracted, personally attracted, right? Because then it's something different, then you're serving your own desire, right? So that, first of all, it's not, what's the word? Ethical. It's not ethical within the, like doctors and people like that, you don't treat people to whom you have like a serious, like doctors don't treat their wives, for example. So there was that, but here's what we decided to do. We decided that, yes, okay, we'll do it. And the partner will be there and in my mind, I set my intention, okay? Yes, I have a very strong desire for this man, and I seriously want to indulge it, and it's taboo. It really is like it's not ethical, and it's out of my integrity to do it because I have too much desire. But I'm going to do it anyway at his insistence, because I'm going to draw in the partner who's already feeling super sensitive about the fact that she understands there's this ridiculous attraction between this man and I. And we met in a silent retreat. We said nothing. We didn't even make eye contact. It was this energetic, like, that went on for 7 days, So there we are, the three of us. And I'm thinking, holy shit, Yvonne, you better do this one right. You're going to like seriously fall off the edge again, And I thought, wow, how am I gonna navigate this? And I said, this is really tricky and really dangerous, because he and I have a strong attraction. I said to her, she already knew this. And she said, yeah, I know that. And I said, because we have a strong attraction, we want to be in this situation. And you guys are a partnership. And I am not going to do anything that affects and harms that relationship. But what I will do is I will show you how to massage this man for your pleasure. And I will show you the techniques There are specific techniques, and I will show you some of them, what I can show you without, being with you for 2 weeks, 8 hours a day. I'll show you what I can show you. And I completely involved her in this process, and I could sense that she was super uncomfortable when she arrived, when they all arrived. And like 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, she was just like, I could feel her receptivity opening more and more and more. And then I could feel, at a certain point, I felt like she was just like in awe of the process, and I could feel her, her cells were like, wow, this new way of relating with my boyfriend, like there's this new way of relating with my boyfriend, I could feel it. And that's all. That's my story. So it was pretty powerful. No, really, it was very, very, very powerful and very tricky, But I have to say that it satisfied my desire, actually, because I held to that intent, I think, that I was going to do it for her, for them,
How did it transmute you? Like you transmuted her
saying.
energy, right?
That's what I'm saying.
So
Well,
she has that new persona.
And I felt, I didn't feel anymore like, I gotta have this man, I gotta have this man, I gotta have this man. I didn't have that anymore.
Yeah.
It,
So
it
beautiful.
satisfied my desire, to like, touch him, totally.
So I see the two circles and the interaction, the subject, the object, and the new seed is the
Right.
interaction, right? So even for myself, I have like this realization is, okay, Deborah, so the subject is this, and this is your mind. So how do we transmute the seed? Like, here's our opportunity to take this seed. And if we want an apple tree, let's plant an apple tree. If we want, to release this passion, or we want to use this as a teaching, then this is the interaction. So it's, thank you for sharing that story, because that's where I seen that led to gold. And that's what I really better embrace this week with myself. And I can use it in this situation, in all the situations. Now it becomes the emptiness of the situation.
And and I mean, you can all clearly see that to secretly have contact with that man would have created a certain karma. And you can see that turning it around to be something for them to enrich their relationship is going to plant a different seed for me. What kind of seed do you think it's going to plant for me? I'm going to manifest some juicy man like that who is available. Right?
And I'm going to heal all the mental afflictions that the people that I know that are in the world that have these mental afflictions that I have.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's right. It's a total system fuck. So yes, everything is available to you. Use everything. Nothing is wrong. You could use everything, okay?
And the more I beat up my body and with my thoughts, the more padding it needs.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Lada. Thank you, Lada, for asking us for Daylam 3 so that we could use the meditation.
Is someone sending out the information, the workbooks?
Oh yeah, I think I already did that. I sent it to Lada or Eva this morning.
Okay.
I sent you the materials for Daylam 3 this morning. Lada.
Okay, I'll send it out. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Just send it to people who are here. I don't think Lada needs it. No, she doesn't need it, but right, Lada? You have everything, right, Lada?
I can send it anyways, but
Okay. So let's dedicate and with a very specific intention to be really clear about today's way of using Dakshin Nyamje. Today's way, okay? Pride, competitiveness, jealousy, contempt, superiority things, okay? That flavor, okay? All right. So I clearly, clearly get it. clearly allow this kind of stuff to flow freely in you so that you can use it, and make an offering of the benefits that will come from your allowing this to be in you, to welcoming all of these bits and pieces of you to be there. Okay, thank you, beautiful Dakinis. That was really difficult, you know. All right. See you next
Thank you,
time.
Mama. Please
Yeah, I
keep
just-
teaching and please stay.
Yeah, I just want to say that next week is June something, so we have a class. And the week after that, June 11th, yes. And then I just want to tell you right now that June 16th and 25th, I'm in training with my teachers to do more like level 2 training, online training with my new skills. So the 18th and the 25th, no sadhana class, unless we do it in the afternoon. I'll put out a note and see if it's possible. And the week after that, we will have sadhana class. And then July 9th, yes. And then July 16th is Swamiji's retreat. So no class, okay? So June 18th and 25th, I will let you know. We could do it in the afternoon, at least just class, like Tantra class. If, you know, not, maybe not asana, but Tantra class we could do. And then, or some other day. And then what did I say? July 23rd is, or sorry, July 16th and 23rd. No. Sorry, July, when is Swamiji here?
16th.
Oh yeah, just the 16th, July 16th. is
Yeah.
Swamiji will be here. So definitely no class on that day. Okay. All right. Love you. Thank you. Bye. Sorry to keep you so long.